There is a kind of success that looks glorious from the outside, admired, validated, and celebrated. But behind the applause, it demands a quiet, invisible price, the abandonment of your own truth. In the pursuit of external triumph, many people build thriving careers, accumulate accolades, and chase recognition. But in the process, something subtle begins to erode, something that doesn't make headlines, that no one else can see. Your bond with your authentic self. You follow the script. Do this, become that, check this box. And without realizing, you start drifting from your center. By the time the applause comes, you're already a stranger to yourself. The modern world presents polished templates for success, ready-made paths, clear milestones, formulas that seem universal. But Jung warned, every time you follow a path without questioning, you risk arriving at a destination that leaves you hollow. And that's the paradox. You win, but feel lost. You climb higher, yet feel emptier. You smile in the spotlight, while your inner voice grows quiet. For Jung, the real victory was never about conquering the world. It was about preserving the soul, staying whole as you walk your path. Because if success demands the betrayal of your essence, then what exactly have you won? It's not about rejecting ambition or romanticizing isolation. It's about reclaiming direction, choosing with integrity, remembering that no external gain can compensate for internal disintegration. Ask yourself, not just what have I achieved, but who did I stop being to achieve it? This video isn't here to tell you to abandon your journey. It's here to ask, are you still on your path? It's a call to those who have already felt it, that no applause can fill certain voids, that something within, something essential, still waits to be reclaimed. And to begin, you must dare to return to yourself, without guilt, without hesitation, without fear of losing what was never truly yours. You might believe you're steering the ship, but be honest. How many of your recent decisions were truly your own? How often did you say yes while your entire being whispered no? How many compliments did you accept for things that didn't even move your heart? There's a vast difference between living and performing a life, and many people, perhaps even you, have mastered a role so perfectly that they no longer know where the mask ends and the truth begins. Jung called this the identification with the persona. But this isn't just theory. It's your Monday mornings, your polite smiles, your filtered emotions. It's the way you modulate yourself to appear mature, to seem stable, likable, competent. But all this self-curation is exhausting. And worse, it disconnects you from your joy, from your pain, from your truth. Because a life built on performance may gain applause, but it loses intimacy. You begin to form connections not from your soul, but from your script. And that's where we begin this journey. And so it begins. You're surrounded by people, praised, congratulated, celebrated, yet profoundly lonely. Because somewhere deep down, you know the truth. No one really knows who you are anymore, and perhaps neither do you. This kind of disconnection from the self rarely arrives with thunder. It seeps in slowly. It starts with small silences, moments where you bite your tongue, where you nod when your heart screams, no. Tiny betrayals of your own truth, justified as maturity, professionalism, adulthood. You begin to smooth your edges, polish your spontaneity, trim your authenticity to fit expectations. And one day, you wake up, successful, respected, and completely absent from your own life. This is the real danger. The world continues to clap. Your performance is rewarded. You are promoted, celebrated, admired, but the applause is for someone you're not. No one questions your pain because it wears a suit and smiles on schedule. And the hollowness grows. Silent, acceptable, invisible. You function, you achieve. And no one notices the panic at night, the insomnia, the inexplicable dread before another day of being someone you've crafted but never truly were. This is the moment for brutal honesty, because if you keep performing, you'll forget how to be. Not just how to rest, but how to feel, how to desire, how to live. And when that happens, what remains is a shell, a productive machine with no access to soul. So stop, take a breath, ask yourself with unflinching courage, who is this person I present to the world? And who have I suffocated just to keep that version alive? This is the turning point. This is where we begin to uncover the trap that hides inside success, because what you were taught to pursue may be the very thing that's quietly killing who you are. Let's expose it from the beginning. You were conditioned to believe that success equals meaning. That if you followed the blueprint, get the degree, land the job, earn the status, everything else would fall into place. But no one warned you you can check every box and still feel utterly lost. Because the success the world offers is rarely aligned with what your soul needs. And the issue isn't success itself. It's when success becomes your only compass, your only measure of worth. When every decision becomes a negotiation between survival and self. You begin sacrificing your time, your joy, your relationships, your creativity, even your curiosity, just to stay in the game. But here's the tragedy. The finish line keeps moving. There's no end, just a treadmill of achievements that cost you more than they give back. Jung said it clearly. The unlived life is a disease from which one can die. This sounds dramatic, until you realize it describes half the people you know. People who have it together on paper, but live with quiet desperation, recurring anxiety, relationships that crumble, careers that look perfect but feel like cages. This is no coincidence. It is the result of a life built around adaptation rather than authenticity. A life where you contort yourself to fit into spaces that were never meant for your soul. Success in this paradigm becomes a form of erosion. Every step forward wears down something sacred inside. You rise, but forget why you started climbing. You grow, but only in the eyes of others. And when you finally ask, "Is this what I truly wanted?" you're already too far in to walk away without guilt. But it's not too late. You've built something that seems solid, an image polished by effort, sacrifice, and ambition. But now, even as it stands tall before the world, you feel like a stranger behind it. You've given so much that turning back feels like betrayal. And that's how success morphs into a prison. It traps you in a version of life you're terrified to leave. Not because you love it, but because you fear what leaving it might say about you. But here's the truth. Failure isn't walking away from what no longer aligns. Failure is staying in what empties you just because it looks good on paper. Failure is becoming a character in your own life. Charming, accomplished, high-functioning, yet distant from the soul that once dreamed. Failure is ignoring the whispers from within just because the applause outside is still loud. But here's the good news. It's not too late. Not if you have the courage to confront what success has cost you. Because when success doesn't match the self, you're not evolving. You're eroding. Success without self-alignment is a sophisticated form of self-sabotage. And the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to remember who you were before the performance began. So how can you know, in a concrete, practical way, that you're losing yourself? How do you detect the signs that your soul is being stifled under the weight of your lifestyle? Let's make it tangible. You won't wake up one morning with a flashing warning sign. Disconnection doesn't scream. It settles like dust, quietly, persistently. It arrives in small habits, in decisions made not from conviction but from fear. Fear of disappointing, of breaking the script, of letting someone down. Ask yourself honestly, when you say, "I want this," where does that want come from? From deep within, or from what you think you should want? Then look at your silences, the words you swallow just to maintain peace, the truths you avoid because they don't fit the character you're playing. Every time you suppress your voice to preserve an image, you abandon a fragment of who you are. Now observe your energy, not your stamina, but your psychic vitality. At the end of the day, do you feel expanded or diminished? Are you alive in your life, or simply enduring it? When you're disconnected from yourself, the world becomes muted. What once stirred you now passes like static. And eventually you forget what joy even feels like. Another sign, your emotional compass starts to break. A small inconvenience unleashes a flood of rage. A moment of beauty leaves you numb. This isn't a mystery. It's the soul knocking, trying to be heard through the cracks of your emotional shell. Carl Jung called it the return of the repressed. The return of all the unmet needs, all the unlived truths that refuse to be buried forever. They resurface in your irritability, your mood swings, your apathy. They show up in your burnout, your dissatisfaction, your inability to rest. And then comes the fragmentation. You're one person at work, another with friends, a different one at home. But the real tragedy, none of them feel real. You're shape-shifting to survive. But who are you when no one is watching? When the silence comes, does it comfort you or scare you? Because if being alone terrifies you, it might not be because you fear loneliness. It might be because you've lost touch with the person who lives inside the silence. This is what a life off its axis looks like. Not an explosion, but a slow, constant leak of meaning. A background ache that never fully goes away. You look around. Everything seems in place. But inside, something essential is slipping further out of reach. And this is where we need to go next. How to begin returning to yourself, not through drastic change, but through quiet reconnection. And now that you've begun to recognize the signs, the question arises that truly matters. What do you do with this awareness? How do you begin the process of returning to yourself without needing to burn down everything you've built? This is not about erasing your life. It's about realigning it. You don't need to destroy the structure. You need to inhabit it differently. This video now enters a new stage, from reflection to action, because there's good news in all of this. Losing yourself is not a death sentence. It's a call, a silent invitation from the unconscious, asking you to come back home. And in this case, home is not a place. It is your own center, but make no mistake. This return is not automatic. It demands presence, intention, and above all, practice. So let's set theory aside for a moment and walk through real, tangible steps you can begin today to start that internal reunion. First, a deceptively simple but profoundly confronting act. Radical silence. Not guided meditation, not soft background music. Real silence. Sit. No phone, no playlist, no plan, just you and whatever rises to the surface. It sounds easy, but it's brutal. especially for those disconnected from themselves, because in that silence, all the parts of you you've ignored finally get their turn to speak. The irritation, the boredom, the fear, the voices of old wounds. They all emerge, and that's the point. The initial discomfort is not a mistake. It's the beginning of reconnection. Second, begin dialoguing with the unconscious. Jung taught that the unconscious is always speaking, but it speaks in symbols, emotion, and metaphor. So start with deep journaling, not for social media, not for productivity, but for truth. Write without censorship. Let your hand speak before your mind filters it. Write down what you fear, what you want but are afraid to admit, what hurts that you thought was forgotten. Don't edit. Don't perform. Just express. Sometimes the ink will carry sadness, sometimes rage, sometimes long-forgotten dreams. Whatever it brings, welcome it. Because the pages become a mirror, one where you no longer need to hide. Third, build rituals of symbolic reconnection. This can be small, even mundane. Take a walk without headphones. Let your body lead. Notice the tension in your chest, the way your breath changes with each step. Or cook a meal slowly with intention as a symbolic act of caring for your inner self. Say no to one thing today, not to rebel, but to respect your own will. These gestures may seem insignificant, but they signal something powerful to your psyche. I exist again, and I choose to live in alignment. Now comes the fourth practice, progressive sincerity. It doesn't mean saying everything on your mind. It means gently testing what it feels like to live in greater truth. Start where your silence is loudest, where you often betray yourself to avoid friction. Maybe you stay quiet in meetings. Maybe you laugh at jokes that aren't funny to you. Maybe you agree to things that leave you exhausted or resentful. Begin there, not with a revolution, with a shift. One sentence spoken in honesty, one boundary stated gently, one mask removed. Every small act of truth repairs the bridge to your inner self. But here's a warning. As you reconnect, you will start to displease people, especially those who benefited from the version of you that adapted, performed, and pleased. This is inevitable, and it is also a sign of progress. In the next section, we will dive into this most painful and liberating part of the journey, the fear of disappointing others, because choosing yourself will cost the approval of some. But what you gain in return is the one thing you lost trying to please them, yourself. Not everyone will accept your transformation with grace. Sometimes the resistance begins with a raised eyebrow, a subtle shift in tone, a disappointed silence, a friend who pulls away, a relative who questions your choices, a colleague who seems uneasy around your new clarity. And the deeper truth is this: you're not actually disappointing them. You're disappointing the role you used to play. The agreeable one, the adaptable one, the reflection of what others needed you to be. When you start choosing yourself, you break unspoken emotional contracts that were never negotiated, but silently expected. And that is why it hurts. It's not just their discomfort you feel. It's the pain of outgrowing your own past. But here's the paradox. Every time you disappoint someone by being true, you reaffirm loyalty to your soul. Yes, it will feel selfish. Yes, it will feel wrong. But what is the alternative? To keep pretending? To keep twisting yourself into shapes that no longer fit? Carl Jung warned us. Individuation is a separation process. It separates you from mass opinion, from inherited beliefs, from roles that served a chapter but not your whole story. It's a form of shedding. And yes, shedding feels like loss, but what you are actually losing is everything that never really saw you to begin with. And what begins to grow in that space is authenticity, slowly, quietly, and powerfully, because something extraordinary happens when you stop performing. Those who remain stay for who you truly are, and new people arrive, people who don't need your mask, only your presence, your wholeness. This is where a new definition of success is born. Not applause, not achievements, not admiration, but this. Waking up, looking at yourself in the mirror, and finally feeling peace. That's where we arrive now, at the final step in this journey, the step where success is no longer a performance, but an inner reconciliation. Because in the end, it doesn't matter how many degrees are on the wall, how many promotions you've received, or how many followers you've gained. What matters is this: when everything is quiet, when it's just you, can you sit with yourself and feel whole? Not perfect, not polished, just true. Jung reminds us, the soul is not interested in credentials. It doesn't care about metrics. It wants truth, integration, coherence. It wants you. And if your whole life is spent trying to be everything for everyone, you will lose what you were born to be, yourself. That is why the deepest success is not external validation. It is internal integrity, a promise made and kept with your own soul, a decision to never again abandon yourself in exchange for belonging. This is not easy. You may lose comfort. You may lose people. But what you gain is irreplaceable, a sense of wholeness that cannot be bought, earned, or faked. And if you've come this far, something in you already knows this. Something in you has already started walking home. So now I ask you, what have you been sacrificing to be accepted? And what are you finally ready to reclaim? Write it in the comments, not for others, for yourself. Make this your turning point. And if this video touched something real in you, don't stop here. The next episode continues this journey. Watch it, because the road back to yourself is long, but every conscious step you take is a quiet revolution against everything that tried to make you forget.